Our story wasn't one of fairy tales or grand romances, but it was ours. We were the chubby couple, comfortable in our skin and in our love, untouched by the world's harsh judgments. Life was simple, our routines predictable, but everything changed 2 years ago when a routine blood test revealed the lurking dangers in my health: diabetes, gout, and hypertension. The news hit me like a ton of bricks, not just for the fear of illness, but for the realization of how fragile life truly was. Jane and I, we took that fear and turned it into resolve. We embarked on a journey towards a healthier life, slowly at first, adapting to the changes in diet and lifestyle. I watched the numbers on the scale descend from 117 to 85 kilograms, the physical transformation that mirrored the internal one. Jane, too, found her stride in this new life, shedding weight until the scale read 65 kilograms. We were a team, united in our quest for health. We joined a local gym, a place that became our afternoon haven. It was there we met him, let's call him Baldy. He was the kind of gym coach who knew his craft and wasn't shy about showing off his chiseled physique. As Jane and I became regulars, I couldn't help but notice the attention she began to receive, especially from Baldy. It was subtle at first, but as Jane's transformation became more apparent, so did the glances thrown her way. At first, I felt a surge of pride. Jane was stunning, her newfound confidence adding to her allure. She had always been beautiful to me, but now others saw it too. But that pride slowly morphed into something else, something darker, as I watched Baldy's eyes linger a little too long, his attention a little too focused. The first rail crack appeared one afternoon while we were on the elliptical machines. Baldy, shirtless and glistening, took his position at the cable machine directly in our line of sight. He began his crossovers, muscles rippling with each movement. I turned to Jane, my expression a mix of amusement and disbelief, only to find her gaze fixed on him. Her lips parted slightly, a subconscious gesture that didn't escape my notice. And there was Baldy, that self-assured grin on his face, as if he knew the effect he was having. I felt a pang in my chest, a mixture of hurt and something akin to betrayal. The car ride home was filled with an awkward silence, broken only by my comment about Baldy showboating. Jane's response was nonchalant, almost rehearsed. Really? I didn't notice. But the seed of doubt had been planted, watered by her unconvincing denial and the growing frequency of their conversations at the gym. The incident at the Smith machine was the tipping point. Jane, focused on her squats, didn't see Baldy approaching until his hands were on her waist, supposedly to assist her. Anger flared within me, a burning, righteous fury that I had never felt before. I intervened, my words terse and laced with venom. Baldy's easy smile and casual dismissal did nothing to quell the storm brewing inside me. That night, our condo became a battleground. Words like arrows, each one aimed to wound. Jane accused me of being immature, of jealousy. I countered, accusing him of trying to seduce her, questioning why she allowed his touch. Her defense was weak, unconvincing. I didn't want to be rude, she said, but it was more than that, and we both knew it. The argument ended with a hollow resolution to change gyms, but the damage was done. The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage had begun to crumble. In the months that followed, Jane's resentment grew, festering like a wound left untended. She became distant, her replies to my messages short and unenthusiastic. My heart ached with the growing realization that the woman I loved was slipping away from me. In a desperate bid to salvage what was left of our marriage, I suggested couples therapy. But Jane's refusal, her accusation that my trust issues were mine alone to deal with, felt like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. And so, I found myself in therapy, grappling with the fragments of my marriage, hoping against hope to find a way to piece it back together. But even as I sought help, Jane's behavior remained unchanged, our intimacy a thing of the past. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that the distance between us was more than just emotional. It was during this time that my suspicions took root, leading me down a path I never thought I'd tread. I checked her phone, searched her car for any sign of infidelity, but each time, I came up empty-handed. The lack of evidence did little to ease my mind. If anything, it only deepened the sense of unease that had taken hold of me. Our conversations were brief, Jane often dismissing her behavior as a phase, something that would pass with time. But, deep down, I knew it was more than that. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was becoming a stranger before my very eyes. It was Mr. P, the cheerful security guard at our condo, who unwittingly set the wheels in motion for the unraveling of my marriage. His casual mention of a massagist visiting Jane sparked a fire within me, a fire fueled by betrayal and a desperate need for the truth. And so, I began to investigate, to piece together the puzzle that was slowly destroying my life. The days following the revelation for Mr. P were a blur, a tumultuous mix of emotions and unspoken questions that hung heavily in the air of our condo. Jane's routine remained unchanged, a steady rhythm of work and gym, while I found myself becoming a shadow in my own life, watching and waiting for something, anything, that might shed light on the growing chasm between us. Baldy's presence at our new gym was like a silent specter, his absence almost more unsettling than his unwanted attention had been. Jane seemed oblivious to the shift in our dynamics, or perhaps she was simply choosing to ignore it. Her smiles were fewer, her laughter forced, and the conversations we used to share dwindled to nothing more than necessary exchanges. My attempts to bridge the gap were met with cold indifference. Each message I sent, each meme shared in a desperate attempt to rekindle the warmth we once had, was either ignored or met with monosyllabic responses. The woman I had known, the woman I had loved, was slipping away from me, replaced by a stranger with Jane's face. The gym became a battlefield, each workout a silent war of glances and unspoken accusations. I watched as Jane interacted with others, her laughter easy and free in a way it no longer was with me. And then there was the squat incident, a moment etched in my memory with painful clarity. Jane was at the Smith machine, her form perfect as she executed each squat with a grace that belied the effort involved. Baldy approached, his smile all charm and charisma. I felt a knot form in my stomach as he placed his hands on her waist, supposedly to assist her. The rage that coursed through me was a living thing, a beast clawing its way to the surface. I intervened, my words a hiss of barely contained anger. I got it from here. Baldy simply smiled, that infuriating, patronizing smile, and walked away. But the damage was done. Jane's eyes flashed with anger and hurt, her words cutting deeper than any knife. My God. Op. The argument that followed at home was a tempest, a whirlwind of accusations and hurtful words that left us both reeling. Jane called me immature, jealous. I accused her of encouraging Baldy's attentions, of betraying the trust that had once been the cornerstone of our relationship. The resolution to change gyms was a band-aid on a gaping wound, a futile attempt to stem the bleeding of a relationship that was slowly dying. In the months that followed, the distance between us grew. Jane's resentment was a palpable thing, a barrier that I seemed unable to breach. The trust one once had in her was shattered, replaced by a gnawing suspicion that consumed my thoughts. Our routines diverged further when a new opportunity at work arose, requiring my presence in the afternoons. We were like ships passing in the night, our schedules no longer aligned, our lives diverging on paths that seemed destined never to cross again. The void left by our lack of communication was filled with silence, a heavy, oppressive thing that weighed on me with each passing day. I tried to reach out, to bridge the gap with messages and calls, but they were met with indifference. Jane's responses were perfunctory, devoid of the warmth and affection that had once defined our relationship. Desperation led me to therapy, a last-ditch effort to salvage what remained of our marriage. But even as I sought help, Jane's behavior remained unchanged. Our intimacy was a thing of the past, her excuses becoming more frequent and more hollow with each passing day. I turned to her phone in search of answers, a violation of privacy that I never thought myself capable of. But the need to know, to understand what was happening, was a siren call I couldn't resist. Yet, each time I looked, I found nothing, no evidence of infidelity, no secret messages or calls. It was as if Jane had become a ghost, her true self hidden behind a veil I couldn't lift. The condo we shared became a prison, its walls echoing with the ghosts of happier times. The security guard, Mr. P, became an unwitting confidant, his casual comments about Jane's activities sparking a fire of suspicion within me. The mention of a massagist visiting Jane was a blow I hadn't anticipated, a revelation that sent me spiraling into a pit of despair and anger. I began to investigate, driven by a need to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I followed Jane, my heart in my throat as I watched her meet Baldy at the mall. They were like a couple, their laughter and intimacy a stark contrast to the coldness that had become our norm. I tried to follow them, to gather the evidence I needed to confirm my worst fears, but I was thwarted at every turn. My attempts to uncover the truth met with obstacles that seemed insurmountable. The realization that Jane hadn't attended the gym in months was a revelation that shook me to my core. It was as if the woman I had married, the woman I had loved, had been replaced by a stranger who was living a life I knew nothing about. I returned home, a man broken and lost, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and unanswered questions. The call to my parents was a lifeline. My father's comforting words a balm to my wounded soul. His advice to gather evidence, to prepare for the inevitable end of my marriage, was a cold comfort in the face of the betrayal I felt. Jane's call, her casual mention of her workout, was a knife to my heart. I played the part of the dutiful husband, hiding my pain behind a mask of illness and concern for her well-being. But inside, I was crumbling, the foundations of my life eroding beneath me. The realization that Jane was communicating with Baldy under the guise of a female coworker was the final piece of the puzzle. It was a clever ruse, one that had kept me in the dark for far too long. My heart ached with the betrayal, the realization that the woman I loved was capable of such deception. As I sat in my condo, the walls closing in around me, I knew that my marriage was over. The trust, the love, the shared dreams, all of it was gone, replaced by a chasm of pain and betrayal. The woman I had loved, the woman I had planned to spend my life with, was a stranger to me now. And so, I prepared for the end of my marriage, the end of the life we had built together. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that I knew I had to face. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The life I had known was over, and a new chapter was about to begin. The days following my discovery of Jane's betrayal were a maelstrom of emotions. Anger, hurt, disbelief, they swirled within me. A tempest that threatened to consume everything in its path. The life I had known, the love I had cherished, now lay in ruins, shattered by the cruel hand of infidelity. I was a man on the edge, teetering between despair and a desperate need for closure. My investigation into Jane's activities had led me to a chilling conclusion. She was having an affair with Baldy, the very man I had instinctively distrusted from the start. The security footage Mr. P showed me was the final, damning piece of evidence, a visual confirmation of my worst fears. The day I decided to follow Jane was the day my world came crashing down. I saw them together at the mall, their laughter and easy intimacy a stark contrast to the coldness and distance that had become the norm in our relationship. They walked hand in hand, oblivious to the pain and betrayal that their actions had wrought. I followed them, my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of fear and determination driving me forward. But fate, it seemed, was not on my side. A vigilant guard stopped me, cutting short my pursuit and leaving me with a myriad of unanswered questions. It was then that I realized the extent of Jane's deception. Her phone, always with her, had been the perfect cover, the reason her movements had seemed so innocuous. She had been careful, cunning even, in hiding her affair. But the truth was now out, a searing light that illuminated the lies and deceit that had poisoned our marriage. Returning home, I felt like a stranger in my own life. The condo, once a haven of love and comfort, now felt like a prison, its walls echoing with the ghosts of a happier past. I called my parents, my voice breaking as I recounted the sordid tale of betrayal and heartache. My father's words were a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkness that had engulfed me. Jane's call later that evening was a charade, a performance worthy of an Oscar. She spoke of her workout, her voice light and carefree, as if our world hadn't just come crashing down. I played along, masking my pain and anger behind a facade of illness. I needed time, Time to plan my next move, to gather the evidence that would free me from the shackles of a loveless marriage. The revelation that Jane had been communicating with Baldy under the guise of a female coworker was the final straw. It was a betrayal of the worst kind, a calculated dissection that cut to the very core of my being. My trust, once given so freely, was now shattered, broken by the lies and duplicity of the woman I had loved. The decision to end my marriage was not an easy one, but it was necessary. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. Jane was no longer the woman I had married, the woman I had planned to spend my life with. She was a stranger, a shadow of the person I had once known and loved. And so, I prepared for the legal battle that lay ahead. My lawyer, a seasoned veteran of the divorce wars, was my ally in this fight, a guiding light in the darkness that had enveloped my life. The evidence I had gathered was damning, a clear indication of Jane's infidelity and betrayal. The days that followed were a blur, a haze of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. I was a man adrift, lost in a sea of pain and heartache. But through it all, I held on to a glimmer of hope, a belief that I would emerge from this storm stronger and more resilient. The confrontation with Jane was inevitable, a showdown that was as painful as it was necessary. I confronted her with the evidence of her infidelity, her betrayal laid bare for all to see. Her reaction was a mix of shock and denial, a feeble attempt to cling to the remnants of a marriage that had long since died. I stood my ground, my voice steady and resolute. This is over, Jane. Our marriage, our life together, it's all over. Her tears, her pleas for forgiveness, they meant nothing to me now. The woman I had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had betrayed everything we had built together. The divorce proceedings were a formality, a legal necessity to end a relationship that had already died. Jane's lawyer, a shark in a suit, fought tooth and nail, but the evidence was irrefutable. The judge's gavel was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage, a bitter end to a love story that had once held so much promise. In the end, I walked away from the courthouse a free man, but the freedom came at a price. The pain of betrayal, the loss of a love that had once been my everything, was a wound that would take time to heal. But I was determined to move forward, to rebuild my life from the ashes of a shattered marriage. And so, I stepped into the sunlight, the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, ready to embrace the future with open arms. The weeks following the divorce were a period of profound introspection and gradual acceptance. The raw wound of betrayal slowly began to heal, morphing into a scar that spoke more of survival than of pain. I found myself navigating through a maze of emotions, each turn bringing me closer to a sense of peace that had long eluded me. My days took on a new rhythm, a cadence marked by moments of solitude and reflection. The condo, once a shared space filled with laughter and love, now echoed with the silence of my solitary existence. I packed away the remnants of our life together, each photograph, each memento, a bittersweet reminder of what had been. The emotional fallout of the divorce was like walking through a fog, each step uncertain, each breath a struggle. My family became my anchor, their unwavering support a constant in the ever-shifting sands of my life. Conversations with my parents, once filled with plans and aspirations, now revolved around healing and moving forward. Work became a refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the mundanity of daily tasks. My colleagues, aware of the storm that had raged through my personal life, offered words of comfort and understanding. I threw myself into my responsibilities, finding solace in the routine and structure that my job provided. In the quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on the past, on the love that had once been the center of my world. Jane's betrayal was a wound that still ached, but with each passing day, the pain lessened, replaced by a sense of acceptance and, eventually, forgiveness. Not for her actions, but for my own peace. The legal battle over our assets was a necessary evil, a final severing of the ties that had bound us together. My lawyer, a stoic figure who had guided me through the treacherous waters of divorce, ensured that the proceedings were as smooth as possible. The division of our possessions was a stark reminder of the finality of our separation, a tangible representation of the end of our shared journey. As the dust settled, I found myself looking towards the future with a cautious optimism. The gym, once a place of conflict and pain, became a sanctuary where I could rebuild my strength, both physical and emotional. The familiar routines, the rhythm of the workouts, provided a sense of stability in a world that had been turned upside down. The interactions with my neighbors, once casual and friendly, now carried an undercurrent of sympathy and curiosity. Whispers and sideways glances followed me, a reminder of the scandal that had unfolded within the walls of our condo. But I faced them with my head held high, refusing to be defined by the actions of another. The hardest part was letting go, not just of Jane, but of the life we had built together. The dreams we had shared, the plans we had made, they were all gone, replaced by a blank slate that was both terrifying and liberating. It was a time of self-discovery, of learning who I was outside the confines of my marriage. And through it all, I held on to the lessons I had learned, the strength I had found in the face of adversity, the betrayal, the pain, the heartache. They had all been part of a journey that had led me to this point, to a place of understanding and acceptance. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I found myself emerging from the fog of the past. The world, once gray and muted, began to regain its color, its vibrancy. I was a survivor, a man who had faced the darkest depths of betrayal and emerged stronger and more resilient. The divorce, once a source of pain and heartache, became a symbol of my strength, a testament to my ability to overcome the challenges that life had thrown my way. I was no longer the man who had walked into that courthouse, broken and defeated. I was a man reborn, ready to face the world with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. And as I stepped into the future, I knew that the scars of the past would always be a part of me, a reminder of the journey I had taken. But they no longer defined me. I was more than the sum of my experiences, more than the pain and betrayal that had once consumed me. I was ready to start anew, to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. The road was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to face whatever the future held.